Could the Arizona Cardinals be the key to the New Orleans Saints getting everything from their offseason wish list? We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert credential member of the media. Find me over at CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday, and then some on Locked On Saints. Show 2 of the day today, bringing you our Tuesday mock draft. But don't forget that today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. To download, just visit ultimate-gm.com, or you can look it up in the app stores as well. It's Ultimate Football GM. Our listeners are going to get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. We'll talk a little bit more about them later. I'll tell you all about that game because I'm absolutely addicted to it right now. But I'm also addicted to mock drafts. Anybody got any more than mock drafts? Like, I loves me some mock drafts, and we're already on to them. I know the season's still going, but like I said, we're splitting everything up. We've got the Tuesday, we've got 2-a-days going on right now, which, by the way, no 2-a-day Thursday and Friday. I'm going to take a little bit of time with the fam and everything like that, but still a daily episode. You still get crossover Thursday, and we'll still get our game plan Friday episode in. But we'll still have 2-a-days today, still 2-a-days tomorrow, as well as we get to the biggest questions around the New Orleans Saints. But today I want to start off with the mock draft here, and the key to the potential of the New Orleans Saints really filling out their wish list over the course of the offseason could be with all of the turmoil going on with the Arizona Cardinals right now. Kyler Murray is hurt. Looks like Steve Keim is on his way out, dealing with some personal stuff, but also some like not so flattering news coming out of Arizona as well. And has Cliff Kingsbury really done enough to keep his job? I don't think so. So could the Arizona Cardinals be the spot that Sean Payton ends up going to? Now, the tricky part about this is trying to fathom what kind of draft capital you could get from a team with no general manager and a team desperate to get a head coach that can support its Pro Bowl level quarterback in Kyler Murray, who would return in 2021 season or 2023 season. But the key here is that the Arizona Cardinals right now in line for like the 4th overall selection. So you're going to be able to get the 4th overall pick from the Arizona Cardinals from Sean Payton? Very likely not. But you can get an early round 2 selection to pair with what will be your early round 2 selection. But could we just imagine for a moment the New Orleans Saints trading their first round pick from next year away to the Philadelphia Eagles, getting 2 first round picks last year, and then getting Chris Olave, who's been awesome, Trevor Penning, who we'll see, but has looked awesome in his opportunities. I know he's had some penalties, things like that. Not really worried about that right now. But then turn around and get a top 5 draft pick better than the one you're going to end up giving Philadelphia. Wouldn't that be incredible? That would be incredible, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I could see the Saints, for instance, getting a 2nd and 3rd round pick from the Arizona Cardinals this year, and then maybe a 1st round pick from 2024, maybe a 2nd round pick from 2024, all of that. So let's say that that's exactly what happens. Let's say that the Saints they keep their 2nd round pick, of course. They get the Arizona Cardinals 2nd round pick and an Arizona Cardinals 3rd round pick. So it gives them 4 picks in the top 100. Also gives you the mobility to move up 2/3, 2 seconds. You can move into the 1st round if you really want to, or you can stand pat, load up your team with 4 new top 100 selections. Here are the selections that I made using the Pro Football Focus NFL Draft Simulator in order to get ready for this episode. So, at pick number 35, which is the projection as of right now through 15 weeks for the Arizona Cardinals 2nd round selection, I was somehow able to grab edge rusher Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. We talked about him in last week's mock draft. He is my edge rusher number 1 in this year's class. I think he's fantastic, and I would love nothing more than to see the New Orleans Saints grab a player like him in this draft. Will they be able to get him at pick 35? Very likely not, right? Like, he is he should be a top 10 selection. But other guys that are coming out of like Florida State, like Verse, maybe you look at another edge rusher like a Zach Harrison out of Ohio State University who has the Buckeyes connection. All of that, maybe that's more likely. Get yourself a really, really good pass rusher at the beginning of the second round without having to get somebody that's a project. I'll warn you about a potential project later on. So at pick 35, I took Tyree Wilson, but replace it with whatever edge rusher you think would be the top edge rusher available at that spot. Still a good selection as long as you don't go with one of the project guys. At pick 40, which was the Saints' first selection, their actual second round pick, I was able to get Hendon Hooker there. Anthony Richardson had come off the board in between 35 and 40. So I'm really not sure I would be tempted to take Anthony Richardson over Hendon Hooker unless Hendon Hooker's injury and, medicals over the offseason are like a disaster, right? Like in that case, then sure. But otherwise, I'm going Hendon Hooker over Anthony Richardson all day. Well, Levis went off the board super early, but there were a couple of other guys that you should be interested in. Jaron Hall, Cameron Ward, Max Duggan, Aidan O'Connell. Aidan O'Connell is a name to watch out for too, by the way, quarterback out of Purdue. Drew Brees is about to be an interim coach with that team. I can't imagine that if Drew Brees isn't impressed by Aidan O'Connell, that he doesn't call up the New Orleans Saints and say, hey, make sure you get a good look at this guy, right? So definitely a name that you will hear over the course of the offseason. Absolutely no doubt about that. But I was able to grab Hendon Hooker there at pick 40. Then I was able to turn around with the Arizona Cardinals third round selection at pick 67. And I wanted to get somebody to shore up the interior, defensive interior. He was the best player available on the board, according to Pro Football Focus at this selection. Keandre Coburn, defensive tackle out of Texas. Listen to me. If I was a general manager, first of all, I'd be very bad at that job if this show hasn't proven anything to you. Except for the draft. I do pretty okay with draft evaluation. But if I was a general manager and I was asked to draft the all nice guy team, Keandre Coburn would be like a number one overall selection for me. This guy's attitude is awesome, and he's big. He's like just over 6 foot, like 6'2", 344 pounds. Started off his career as an edge rusher, moved to the interior. He's a good secondary pass rusher in the interior, good to have, but a phenomenal run stopper. If we know anything about the New Orleans Saints right now, they're struggling against the run. They could use some help on the interior. Checkbox, and he fits the culture so incredibly well. Checkbox, Keandre Coburn, easy selection for me at pick 67. And then I went outside the box a little bit. I know I wanted to get a running back. Guys like, we'll talk about some of the other running backs that could potentially be available, but I went with a local guy here. I went with Tyjae Spears out of Tulane. And that's kind of where I want to pick up and continue our conversation, because Tyjae Spears in the third round feels like a steal to me because I've watched him all season long, but maybe that's just me. So I really want to kind of break this down. Could Tulane be the team that forces the New Orleans Saints to draft a Louisiana College prospect early as opposed to LSU? And could Tyjae Spears be that guy? I'll tell you why I drafted him, why I like him, and why I do think he would be a good selection for the New Orleans Saints as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at the Ultimate Pro Football GM. It's a mobile game that is absolutely awesome, one that I am completely addicted to at the moment. I'm super, super excited about our partnership with them, and I can't wait to tell you about them, so let me do it. If you've ever dreamed of being an NFL GM, there's one of those famous video games out there that claims it has a franchise mode but never pays attention to franchise mode. If you want to scratch that itch, the Ultimate Football GM mobile app will scratch that itch for you. You can do everything from hiring coaches and coordinators, scouts, team psychologists, team doctors, marketing managers, all of that, trade players, make draft picks, do some scouting, all of that as well. Manage the salary cap, free agency. Everything is available to you here on the Ultimate Football GM app, and it's completely free and playable online. There's nothing really pay to win about it. You can play as you go in whatever pace you want to. Nothing that like times out and tells you that you can't do it for the next 24 hours or anything. I absolutely love it. And it's really cool too, because you also get to, and this is what we're doing over on Locked On NFL right now, all of our Locked On NFL hosts are competing against one another in the league. You can do that with your friends as well. Locked On Saints listeners can get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they sign up using the promo code Locked On in all caps. All you have to do is plug it in the game's store. That's Locked On in all caps so that you can check it out today. Make sure you check it out. You'll download the game by visiting either ultimate-gm.com or you can search Ultimate Football GM in your app store or in your game store today. Once again, that's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. Doesn't matter where you are, you'll be able to check it out. Well, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in the US, you're in the UK, Canada, or Australia, you're going to be able to find a huge selection of vehicles for just about every occasion, all brought to you by a community of local hosts, making sure you can find any car wherever you need it. So maybe you're looking for a spacious SUV or a family car for a family trip or a vacation, something like that. Maybe you're looking for a luxury car for a special event, birthday, holiday, something like that. Maybe you want to test drive an electric car. Our friends over at Locked On Mavs just did that not so long ago. Isaac, they rented an electric car to just kind of get an idea of what it would be like. Does it fit in their everyday life? All that. You can test drive. You can figure it all out here with Turo. It's really, really awesome. And you don't have to deal with all the lines in the rental car places, which are absolutely insane right now. Or showing up and being told, hey, we don't have a car for you anymore. Because let me tell you, that happens and it stinks. Many Turo hosts will even deliver the car directly to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars. Find your drive today at Turo.com. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Tyjae Spears, could he be the one that changes the relationship between Louisiana College and Louisiana Pro Sports with the New Orleans Saints? Remember, the New Orleans Saints not often drafting those LSU guys. Could they be interested in a Tulane Green Wave running back who's 5'11", 195 pounds, can catch the football, run up the middle, fight through contact, and also win the edge? Yeah, they absolutely could be interested in this young man. We appreciate you so much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, for your second listen, also go check out Locked On Sports today as well to get the inside scoop on everything going on around the world of sports with the Locked On local insiders and experts. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, Tyjae Spears. Oh, he's so good, isn't he? 190 carries on the season with Tulane, 1,183 yards. So 190 carries on the season, not a big workload. 129 carries in 2021. Back in 2020, 37 carries. What's one of the things that we know the New Orleans Saints chef's kiss, love when it comes to drafting running backs? Guys that still have a lot of tread on the tires and haven't had over like 200, 300 carries in a season. Tyjae Spears checks that box. 190 carries this season, and he's been incredibly efficient with it. 6.2 yards per carry in 2022. Back in 2021, 6.7 yards per carry. I don't even know where he was in 2020. Yeah, 2020 when he had 37 carries, still 7.4 yards per carry and yards per attempt in those. So you talk about a guy that is efficient. You talk about a guy that does not have a lot of tread on the tire. You talk about a guy that is mad versatile, can do a whole bunch of good stuff. Put that in the draft analysis. You fancy draft people out there, mad versatile. I mean, it's just who this guy is. And then you add on top of that what he does as a receiver. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I wanted to also point this out before I move over to his receiving prowess. 725 yards after first contact. Really outstanding at being able to fight through contact and pick up more yards. 863 yards last year in 2021. 581 yards after contact, average over 4.5 yards after contact per attempt, including opportunities when he got outside to where he had way more than that. 187 when he went around the right end, 128 when he went around the left end. I mean, this guy, you get him out in space, he makes some magic. And we know, we talked about it in today's earlier episode, Alvin Kamara not getting out in space. Not really on him. It's a coaching staff thing. So the coaches would have to figure out how to effectively use this guy. But even if they threw him up the middle, listen to this. In the middle of the field, between the center and left guard. Let's go left to right. Let's go between the left tackle and left guard. So basically between, in this case, James Hurst and Andrus Peat. In that gap, 7.8 yards per carry on 30 carries. So not a small sample size here. In between what would be Andrus Peat and Eric McCoy, which is between the left guard and center, 5 yards per carry. 25 carries. Again, not a small sample size there. In between the center and right guard, which would be Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz, 18 carries, pretty good sample size there, 5.8 yards per carry. And then in between what would be Ryan Ramczyk and Cesar Ruiz, right guard, right tackle, only 8 carries, so a smaller sample size there. 11.1 yards, though. So, you can take or leave that one. But anyway, outside the tackles, in between the tackles, yards after contact, picking up yards in space, this guy does it all. And also efficient in the pass game. And, we can look at this in terms of like full receptions and everything that he's done so far on the season. So when we do that and then we can break it down by kind of like, behind the line of scrimmage, all that stuff. But so far on the season, he's got 20 receptions on 23 targets. It's an 87% reception percentage with 234 yards. But the caveat behind the 234 yards there is the way that he's doing most of it. Most of it is coming after the catch. Behind the line of scrimmage, he's been targeted the most, which would be 16 times, caught 15 of those passes, 163 yards. So he's averaging just under 11 yards per catch when targeted behind the line of scrimmage. Hear that? So that means that he's averaging nearly a first down, depending upon how far back the average depth is for those. Actually, here, I could tell you, average depth of target behind the line of scrimmage, 3.9 yards. So in that case, he's averaging about 7 yards gained per target from behind the line of scrimmage. In those situations, 219 yards after catch. 219 yards after catch. In the short area of the field, only targeted 5 times, but 3 catches there for 27 yards. In the intermediate area, targeted twice, 2 catches, 39 yards, including a touchdown. So you're looking for somebody that can run in between the tackles. Check. You're looking for somebody who can operate in space. Check. You're looking for somebody who can fight through contact. Check. Especially if you watch the conference championship that they won. My goodness. You're looking for somebody who can contribute in the passing game as well. Check. You're looking for somebody that the Saints could bring in, utilize up the middle, mix in with Alvin Kamara, and not have to change the playbook when Alvin Kamara is not on the field. Right now with David Johnson, you can't do that. Earlier in the season, when it came to, guys like Tony Jones Jr. and Mark Ingram, you weren't able to do that. This would allow you to finally be able to do that. This is what they brought in Ty Montgomery for years ago. This is one of the things that they liked about Abram Smith before that all fell apart. And so this is a perfect example of a guy that you would be able to mix in. I think he needs to put on a little bit more weight. He's about 195 pounds right now at 5'11". He's got a frame. He can add some more weight. But once he's able to do that, once he's able to get up to NFL size, he's got the NFL speed and he's got the talent. So maybe he could be the one that changes the sort of stigma around the New Orleans Saints in drafting Louisiana prospects. Who are some of the other names to keep in mind at running back in this year's draft? I've got 3 names for you that you need to make sure that you know, and why the New Orleans Saints should be interested in them. We'll break down each and every one of them as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks Daily Fantasy, made the way that it should be, made easy, all that good stuff. None of this, drafting a daily lineup that's performing against a bunch of people whose lineups you can't see and all of that. No. None of that weird, shady stuff. It's super easy, super simple. Prize Picks allows you to pick 2 to 5 players. Then all you have to do is choose whether or not they're coming in at more or less than the Prize Picks projection. Are you smarter than Prize Picks? Is Prize Picks smarter than you? That's all you have to do. You get those right, and you talk about some of your favorite players, some of your favorite teams, some of your favorite matchups that you already know extremely well. You get those right, you're going to be able to win up to 10 times your entry back. And first-time users can get a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 by simply using the promo code LOCKEDON over at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. You deposit $100, you get $100. You deposit $50, you get $50. It's that simple. You just use the promo code Locked On. You get that 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 at the Prize Picks app or at prizepicks.com today. Let's get it. Who Dat Nation, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a look at a couple of other running backs that New Orleans Saints should absolutely be interested in investing in this year's NFL draft. And I want to start this by saying this. One way or another, the New Orleans Saints should be looking to add talent to this running back room in 2023. Absolutely no doubt about it. And that's nothing against Alvin Kamara or anything like that. I think Alvin Kamara is still as talented as he's always been. He's just not really being utilized the way that we're accustomed to seeing him because he doesn't have the talent around him that's allowed for that to happen in the past. So I think it's just as good for Alvin Kamara as it is for the New Orleans Saints, and therefore even better for the New Orleans Saints to invest in the running back position over the course of the offseason. But you have to actually invest in it. So that means going out and finding a starting caliber free agent that you somehow work out a deal with, or investing a draft pick in the position. Undrafted free agent running backs are undrafted for a reason. And this has been proven time and time again for the New Orleans Saints. Yes, they got Pierre Thomas right. 100%. Tony Jones Jr., though, Abram Smith, though, who's not even in the NFL anymore, these guys are undrafted for a reason. And I think the New Orleans Saints have kind of learned that the hard way over the course of these past few seasons, and now should pivot into actually investing capital into this position, because you need to find some help for Alvin Kamara in the backfield. Now, we'll see how Eno Benjamin ends up factoring into all of this as well. Hopefully, we get to see him a little bit more over the last couple of games. We didn't get to see him up against the Atlanta Falcons. Just too tight a turnaround between when he arrived in New Orleans and when it was time for him to get out on the field to play. Not surprised that he was inactive. But David Johnson had the fumble. I think they're going to have a very short leash on that whole idea, especially with Eno Benjamin now in the building. Anyway, 3 running backs that you should know for the New Orleans Saints. I want to start off with the guy that's very likely out of reach, but could be there if the Saints, let's say, get that pick 35 from the Arizona Cardinals and a team doesn't desperately rush into a running back selection in the first round, which is possible. And that's Texas running back Bijan Robinson. I mean, name it and this guy can do it. He's been outstanding for years and years and years. Yards after contact, yards between the tackles, yards outside the tackles, yards in the passing game. You name it, this guy can do it. He's even a good pass protector. I mean, just outstanding. The most complete running back in this year's class. Everyone's running back one. Anybody who tells you that Bijan Robinson is not your running back, is not their running back one, is just being a contrarian, or they're just having some fun with you. Bijan Robinson is the guy. He is him when it comes to the running backs in this year's class. He'll very likely be a first-round pick. He should be well off the board before the New Orleans Saints even get an opportunity, no matter who they trade with, unless they trade with somebody who gives them a first-round pick if they move Sean Payton's rights. But worth knowing, because Eric McCoy was supposed to be a first-round pick as well. CJ Gardner-Johnson was supposed to be a first-round pick as well. Those guys went second round and fourth round, respectively. So you never know. You never know it, especially with a position whose value is as volatile as running back. You never know. So Bijan Robinson, definitely somebody to pay attention to over the course of the offseason. Another guy that I just love watching is Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. This kid is just insane. And really, you want to know what he is? You want to know who he is? He's kind of just Alvin Kamara, right? Like if you wanted to draft the next quote unquote Alvin Kamara, then you draft Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jahmyr Gibbs is an underclassman. He could end up going back to Alabama. I don't think you do, though, if you're a running back. That would be very surprising to me. Like his draft stock is probably as high as it's going to get with playing live action. But this guy's outstanding. He spent 2 years at Georgia Tech, was good there, transferred to Alabama, and was just an absolute machine with Alabama. And the thing about it, too, is that like the same thing that we discussed with Tyjae Spears, with him not having a ton of tread on the tires in the run game, is kind of true for him. He's gotten more carries, though. He's got 113 attempts in 2022, had 143 with Georgia Tech in 2021, 89 in 2022. Averaged 6.3 yards per carry, had 7 touchdowns. Just in the run game. And then you add in the sort of receiving prowess that he has as well, what he could do out of the backfield as a pass catcher. 42 catches on 50 targets, 378 yards, 3 more touchdowns. So 10 total touchdowns on the season so far. Alabama, obviously, so has at least a game to play. 5'11", 200 pounds. I mean, this guy is Alvin Kamara. So if you're looking for somebody to be a partner with Alvin Kamara and then eventually potentially be the next Alvin Kamara, as we know that running back shelf lives are always going to be a bit shorter than the other shelf lives across the NFL, Jahmyr Gibbs is absolutely somebody to consider. Finally, and LSU fans are gonna probably not like me for this one, but it is UCLA running back Zach Charbonnet. And LSU fans remember Zach Charbonnet from a couple years ago in the season opener between UCLA and LSU. They remember him for all the wrong reasons. I understand. I too was there. Spent 2 years at Michigan, transferred to UCLA. Another guy that is really good in multiple ways. He's got 37 catches for 320 yards this season. He had 23 receptions last year. So you can utilize him in the passing game as well. But in the run game is really where he excels. So if you're looking for somebody that's a little bit more of a traditional running back, 194 carries this year, 1,358 yards. He's only crossed the 200 carry threshold once. That was last year, where he had over 1,100 rushing yards. 14 rushing touchdowns this year, 13 rushing touchdowns last year, 11 with Michigan 2 years before that. This dude is awesome. And I want to look at like yards after contact here. So 806 yards after contact in 2022 with 1,300 rushing yards, nearly 1,400 rushing yards under his belt with a 7.0 yard per attempt average. This guy is awesome. And I would probably put him above Tyjae Spears, just if I'm being 100% honest. Probably if I was ranking these guys, it would be in the order that I talked about him. Bijan Robinson 1, Jahmyr Gibbs 2, Zach Charbonnet 3, and then Tyjae Spears 4. Just amongst those 4, obviously there are other running backs that can factor in terms of like a top 5 list and stuff like that. I highly suggest Locked On NFL Draft if you're interested in that. But the Saints have, even without trading Sean Payton, the positioning that they need to really reinvest in the running back room this offseason. And there are multiple good options. And I'm sure, there's the Michigan running back as well. There are more guys that are out there for sure that, I left off of this list just for now that we'll, of course, be talking about all throughout the offseason. But that's kind of where I sit. So just to recap the mock draft for you before we sign off here. At pick 35, which I got from the Arizona Cardinals in a Sean Payton trade, got pick 35, pick 67 from them for this year. I went with Tyree Wilson because he was available on the board, very likely going to be off, but a top draft edge rusher. The name to watch out for, though, Georgia Tech edge rusher Keon White. Keon White is like a project guy. He is one of those guys that like doesn't really have a second move yet, but is big, lanky, traitsy, has the length that the Saints love at the position, all that. I'm a little bit off on those guys right now based on what we've seen over the course of the past couple of years from Marcus Davenport and then the unfortunate injuries and everything that have also derailed Peyton Turner's start. But I'm a little bit off of those guys right now, so I'm going for a fully polished edge rusher, so I like a guy like Tyree Wilson there. Pick 35, I went with Hendon Hooker. We've discussed him. I did a breakdown of him 2 Thursdays ago. You can go and find that episode wherever you get your podcast. Keandre Coburn, the interior defensive lineman, from Texas, who I just like love in terms of his personality, but also gives you a secondary pass rusher on the interior, great against the run as well, scrapes extremely well, has some edge experience, even with his size, and his size is a selling point as well. And then Tyjae Spears, the halfback out of Tulane, going with the local prospect there, maybe a little bit out of the ordinary at pick 72, but totally happy to grab a guy like that in the 3rd round. So that's our mock draft for today. Coming up tomorrow, it's Wednesday, so we're getting into the film, breaking down a little bit more around the screen passes, getting a little bit more in depth about Alvin Kamara's usage and what the New Orleans Saints can continue to do creatively there. And then we'll also take a look at Bill Barnwell posted a really great article over at ESPN about the likelihood of a reunion in New Orleans when it comes to the quarterback position as opposed to the head coach position. This was a really interesting one. So we'll break that down and kind of react to that and tell you why, it could happen here in tomorrow's episode. And then in the afternoon, we'll get to our biggest questions episode as well. So I appreciate you as always making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to also stop off in your second listen today. Locked On Sports Today, getting you all covered, all taken care of with everything around the world of sports, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Appreciate you as always making me a part of your day, part of your routine, saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.